Welcome to Toffee TV here on Patreon. It is the Tuesday topic. I'm joined by a new face to Toffee TV. His name is Billy. Be nice to him.
Yep.
Billy's an Evertonian. He's from Shrewsbury. He's helping us out in the studio, doing some fine work. Well, he's only doing as good as what I can teach him to do. So that's we're going to see. Yeah. He's wrote some articles, so you might have already seen. Wrote an article last week for us, talking about some of the players Everton have been linked with and some of the players they haven't been linked with, which leads us on to Steve, who's got a question.
Hi lads, Steve here. Hope you're both well. You boys are doing a great job, so keep up the good work. It's just a quick topic for myself today. Really just to see out of obviously the players that we've been linked with so far, which of the players excite you and you think could improve our team. I know obviously we've been linked with a couple already. But just really want to know what you boys thought, really. Cheers.
Tuesday, top work again. Said I would use the video. You sent it in last week. So, who are the players that we have been linked with that we are excited by? Billy, go on. Who's exciting you?
Well, for me, I know Marcel Brands went to scout both Memphis Depay and Toussaint from Lyon. For me, I think Depay would be a great signing. I think the striker role is one that needs to be addressed. I just think he's a really good player, good physically and obviously very good technically. He was in the Premier League before with Man United, wasn't quite good enough, but we saw flashes of what he could do. I actually watched him recently live for Lyon against Manchester City, and he did look much more polished as a player. Seems to have matured and seems bigger physically as well, and seemed to be more of an out-and-out number 9 rather than a winger as we saw before. So I think he'd be a great player, 10 goals, 10 assists in the French league this season. And I think he'd be someone who'd be able to bring the other players into play as well. And I think that'd be quite helpful with the likes of Bernard and Richarlison. So I'd quite like Depay, but there are others as well.
Yeah, we will talk about Depay's an interesting one because Liverpool are getting linked with Depay quite a lot. I mean, I've been listening through the wall, and they had a couple of shows about him last week. So they think it's a player who could certainly improve them. I think he's a player who improve us. I think Marcel Brands knows all about him. He was at PSV, I think, when they sold him. You're right about going to Manchester United. He wasn't ready for Manchester United, or he wasn't ready for the Manchester United that was there for him. Maybe if it was when Sir Alex was there and they had a pathway. But like you said, they didn't really play him in his position. He had to go to Lyon to almost be I think he's the kind of player who likes being the big fish in a small pond, or more to his liking. And we've seen him. He is like one of those. He does like to make a statement. I think
Character.
He does. He reminds me of like Balotelli without being an absolute lunatic. He's got some of the traits. But I watched him play against us a couple of times last season when he was at Lyon. And you could just tell he had the class. He really did. But I think a few clubs will be in for him this summer. And yes, it's great to go and watch him. And yes, it's have the connections. And I do think it would make a statement if we could buy him as well.
I do think it'd be quite an ambitious signing. Maybe too ambitious that it won't happen. But I think it would be good if it did happen. But then again, he does seem like a bit of an outlandish character. And you don't know if that would upset the dressing room a bit, because there aren't many players like that at the moment.
I suppose it comes down to how you look after these players. Some players you bring in, and I think they get too much. But I think if you make them, it doesn't seem to be. I mean, Lyon's not. It doesn't scream.
No,
it doesn't scream like one of those clubs that is going to put up with someone who's going to be a nuisance. I think he's found his home at Lyon. I think he's found somewhere to grow, but he's still only young, really. And I think whoever gets him next will get the benefits of his experience at Manchester United and his experience at Lyon. And I think he's ready to jump back onto the next tier of football. It's just whether we consider ourselves the next tier and whether he considers us the next tier. I think that's the difficult part. Being at Lyon and playing Champions League football for them, I think he'll probably think he is ready to make that leap now.
I agree. Yeah, I just think it's fairly unlikely. just because he is a big name and there are other big clubs being linked with him, and he's already playing Champions League football, which, well, not sure if they're in the Champions League next season, but they were in the Champions League last season.
Yeah.
So maybe he'll want Champions League football again. But yeah, I think there are other signings which are perhaps more likely.
But it's positive. I mean, you mentioned there they went to watch Leon. You know, I'm sure they would run the rule over him. It's important that we do that. A player that I really like, and I'm sure a lot of people, some players that might be a little bit unrealistic, is David Neres, Brazilian international, 22 years of age, 8 goals, 11 assists, 2 in the Champions League, 2 assists in the Champions League. Obviously seen him in the semi-final for Ajax. Can play left and right, would perfectly suit us, really, because I think one of the big problems we had last season was who replaces Richarlison if he's not playing, and who replaces Bernard if he's not playing, and having the continuity that when we've got players out, whether through injury or form, or just whether the manager just wants to change, having someone who could come in and do that. Now, David Neres could definitely do that, but again, you know, you're talking about ambition. He'd be a player who will attract some of the top clubs in Europe if he's available. I mean, he's a player who joined Ajax for Buttons a couple of years ago, really, from Brazil, and I suppose we've got to start trying to get these players at the source. I think that's something we will try and start doing.
Yeah.
Ajax are one of those clubs who can take chances because of the league. Maybe we can't, but I think, you know, he's one who really excites me. He's one we've been linked with. He's one that Richarlison has said he's friends with, and they've got a relationship. I'm more inclined to think that wherever Neres went, Richarlison had followed him rather than the other way around. But it's good to be linked with these players, and I still think that with Marcel Brands at the club, I still think there's almost like that outside chance. Whereas beforehand, you just go, nah, there's no chance. But with someone like Marcel Brands, you almost feel like, well, there might be a chance because of Marcel Brands. But he looks a player, though, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think with Brands as well, obviously, he is Dutch, and it's the Dutch league, so he perhaps has more connections than we might know. But I think he's a really good player. I watched him in the Champions League, quite quick and exciting to watch. And yeah, as you said, I think he'd be a great option to have. I think Bernard and Richarlison are doing really well at the moment, but as you say, when you look beneath that, there isn't quite the quality.
Yeah.
With the likes of Walcott, perhaps isn't quite good enough. Lookman perhaps quite inconsistent at times. So yeah, it'd be a great addition to have, and I certainly wouldn't mind it at all.
I think he's one. I think it's being able to bring him into the team, and him being able to do the same things that Bernard does and Richarlison does, or even better. And whereas when Walcott comes in the team, he can't do those things. He's got his own things, but they're not what the manager wants for the team. And I think that's what we're looking for. We're looking for players who can come in, build the squad out, 2 players in every position, but similar players, not players who change the team. And Walcott, I feel sorry for Walcott in a way, because I don't think he's a player who doesn't try. I just don't think he suits the way we play anymore.
Yeah, I think he always works hard, and he's a threat with his pace, but there just isn't much at the end of that threat, because he just doesn't quite have the end product, I think. Yeah. But he's not bad, but
he's all right.
But if we're trying to push for top 6, he's probably not. He's not that level really, and not the level of the likes of Bernard, Richarlison, and David Neres.
So those 2 are slightly unrealistic. The next one is maybe massively unrealistic, but he is someone we've been linked with. João Felix, Benfica striker. He scored 15 goals this season, 9 assists. Apparently his buyout clause is £104 million. He's been linked with Manchester City, he's been linked with Manchester United, he's been linked with probably everybody. Yeah, but he has been linked with us. So I think he's 19 or something like that?
Yeah.
And he seems to have the absolute world at his feet. I imagine he'll probably be Sané's replacement at Manchester City if he leaves for Bayern Munich, which seems like he possibly could. But listen, if we're going to be linked with someone, then let's talk. I am excited about this player, but
yeah,
it's nice to be linked. I mean, you might sign him, but it's nice to be linked.
Yeah, I just think it's unlikely because he seems like one of those players who is being touted as the next world superstar almost. I just think it's unlikely. He is a good player though. I watched him a bit in the Europa League. He's just really good on the ball. Quite small and a bit sort of scrawny, but yeah, he seems like quite attacking player, or as just someone who'll sort of float in between the striker and the midfield.
Yeah.
Almost a bit like a Dele Alli type. But yeah, really good on the ball, scores goals. But I just don't think it will happen.
No, I don't think it will happen. But he that's not the purpose of the video. The purpose of the video is who excites him. So I'm happy to just play along with the narrative. So there's three straight off the top of our heads that probably are less chance of happening. Out of those three players, though, who do you think would be the most realistic player we could get out of those three?
I'd probably say Depay.
Yeah, I was thinking Depay.
I just don't think Felix will happen. I think between Neres and Depay, I think maybe with how well Ajax have done and the publicity that they've got through the Champions League, I think there will be a lot of clubs in for him. So yeah, I think Depay perhaps. And
if Neres hadn't hit the post, they'd be in the Champions League final now. I'd imagine he hit the post, didn't he? And that could have been the one that clinched it. Yeah, I think those three are unrealistic. So there's another. So we've got another. I don't know, 4 on the board here that we've been linked with so far. Kevin Augustin, we've been linked with quite a lot in the last year. He is at. They're not called Red Bull. Leipzig, RB Leipzig, but it's not Red Bull. It is, but it's not. I think he left Paris Saint-Germain to go to them. 21. Bit of a weird one, this. I was looking before, and I know Baz has spoke about him quite a lot this year. He can play in all three positions up front, which obviously makes him very attractive. But he's only scored 3 goals all season. Now, the back end of the season, he wasn't in the squad much, or if he was on the bench. So I don't know what happened there. But a lot of people have spoke about this lad, and I'd be interested. 21, I'd be interested to see what his wages would be. Maybe we could swap him or put a swap in for Lookman, maybe something like that. But he is someone who's been linked with, and I just find that strange that you get a player who's, there's not saying there's loads of hype about him, but you have a player who's mentioned a lot. But when you go and look at his stats, they're not great, quite poor.
Yeah, I do think it would be a risk because with someone of such little experience, to bring him in as the first choice striker, I just think it would be a risk, especially with his age as well. But then if he was brought in as second choice, would he play much anyway? So I don't know.
I suppose he would be a strike if he was playing all three positions. I think that's absolutely perfect. He would be somebody who, I think that would be the number one thing you'd look at, right? Where can he play? But he can play in all three positions. Would we need someone else? Yes, we would need someone else. If we would look, we'd need another centre forward. You couldn't bring him in. But I think what would be good about bringing someone like him in is, I'd imagine he'd get game time off the bench and starting games in all three positions. He would be able to grow in the team, being only young. He would learn the way we play. He might be suited more for the Premier League than maybe he is for Germany. And maybe he is a prospect rather than he's only 21. So maybe he's a prospect rather than saying, you're the finished article. Maybe, like we've just said, someone like David Neres, if you go back and see where he's come from, in Brazil, maybe if you looked at his stats there, you'd say, well, he needs to go somewhere. Well, maybe the place he needs to go is Everton. It may be the same with Kevin Augustin. Maybe we have to look at a player like that and say, well, you know what, 3 or 4 times, 3 or 4 years, he might be the real deal. But if he was the real deal now, like we've just mentioned with João Felix, and we won't be able to attract him. So maybe we have to go down a level to bring them up 2-3 levels.
Yeah, I think maybe if Everton did go after a more ambitious striker who'd do well for a couple of seasons, but almost if they saw Everton as like a stepping stone to something bigger, then Augustin could be brought in to replace that striker. But yeah, I think I just think it'd be a risk because he is quite unproven. And he might end up being no better than Calvert-Lewin anyway. So
I suppose it ultimately comes down to what kind of price he'd be. If they looked at him and said they could get him for, I don't know, 10, 11 million pounds or something like that, then maybe Everton would be willing to take that gamble. But but with some gambles, Everton scouts might look at him and go, he's brilliant. You know, he's really, really good. He's going to become a top striker or a top all-round player. We can get him now, make him that player, rather than waiting a couple of years. Because I know Marcel Brands was linked to a couple of PSV players that we were linked with, quite young players. And he said, he was asked about them and he said, you know what, I'd love to have them at the club, but there's no point because they wouldn't play here. Whereas in PSV, they're playing, they're developing, and maybe we'll look at them at a later stage. And I know we've been linked with the kid, the Argentinian kid, Sosa. And he's one where, number one, we probably wouldn't get a work permit for it. But they're gonna monitor him. They've seen him, they've identified, and they know he's a good player. And now they're gonna watch him and see how he gets on. And it'll be interesting to see where that goes, because I know there's a kid who's currently playing in Brazil. I think he's 21, and Watford have already bought him.
Oh yeah,
but they've left him there. And I think he scored a hat-trick at the weekend. And now a lot of other clubs have noticed him. I think Liverpool were trying to get him, and they're trying to almost go round this deal that Watford have got with him. So there are ways and means of doing it. You could buy a player but just leave them where they are. It's just whether you do that in the first place. But I think what we might see in the next couple of years is Everton go out there and buy kids like this who have got, they look at and go, this, if we get him and do the right things, we can make him a top player. I mean, because if you think about it, almost like Dominic Calvert-Lewin's almost like that. Went in, bought him young from Sheffield United, and we've made him into a good Premier League player. He could become a lot better. We don't know, but you've got to roll the dice sometimes and just see what happens. Yeah,
I think he might be good, but I just think I'd prefer a more proven goal scorer than that. I think the striker is the big position to address, and we have to get it right.
If we brought in, like, say, let's say we brought in a striker, centre forward, like say a 24, 25-year-old proven centre forward, and then we brought him in as well, and you almost had, well, the proven centre forward as your number one forward, Dominic Calvert-Lewin is your second one, and him as your third one, but also he could play left and right. That to me would make perfect sense.
I think that would be a good option to have, especially when we talked about Neres before, about how he could come on and play, well, maybe even start and play on the wings. But yeah, Augustin could play anywhere amongst the front three. So yeah, it'd be a good option to have. I just think it'd be a big risk in terms of having him as the solution to the problem. I don't think he's the
solution. And I don't think anyone could think he was the solution. And again, it all comes down to what they pay for him as well. If they could get him and they could get him between 10 and 15 million, I think that would make sense. But like, I've not seen a lot of him, and his stats don't scream at me. But at the same time, because I haven't seen a lot of him, I don't know what he's good at. And people might look at Dominic Calvert-Lewin's stats and go, well, he's not very good, is he? But we watch him week in, week out. We know what his strengths are and how he can improve on that. And so I suppose it'd be the same for someone like Kevin Augustin.
Yeah, I think he's already fairly well known. Not like a Santiago Sosa where no one's heard of him. But yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what he'd be brought in as. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I know what you mean, yeah.
I think the plan ideally would be to bring in a top striker as the number one choice and then have Calvert-Lewin as second choice.
But let's stop someone's striker for a moment though. What have you said to him? Like, forget about playing off striker. What about if you brought someone like him in and he then became the backup for Richarlison and the backup for Bernard? See, I could see that.
Yeah.
I could see that. If he plays like Richarlison, that to me makes more sense than having someone like Walcott, who's on 100, let's say he's on £75,000, he's probably on a lot more, but let's say he's on 75,000. If you got rid of him and you brought a kid in like Augustin, who there's no pressure to play, you develop him and you say, well, you can play on the right, you can play on the left, your third choice striker, I think, or even fourth if Cenk Tosun stays, I think that to me makes more sense. I don't ever think he would be looked at as a centre forward, as a 21-year-old who's got very, very poor figures.
Yeah, I also think as well, quite often young strikers who have pace are often just stuck on the wing anyway when teams would rather have a bigger striker who can hold the ball up a bit. So I think maybe he's suffered from that. Yeah, I wouldn't be against it if he was.
We'll wait and see. A striker who has played in the Premier League, he won't be playing in the Premier League next season if he plays for his current club, is Mitrovic at Fulham. 24. He looks older than that, doesn't he?
He does.
Yeah, big paper around. 11 goals and 3 assists is not bad in the Premier League.
No.
When you're playing for a team that gets relegated, that's not bad at all. He looks at times like a really good back to goal centre forward. He doesn't excite me, so that goes. We are literally going down the list. He doesn't excite me as such, and I wouldn't want him as my number one striker. But if you could get him from a reasonable price, I could see why he would be a decent squad player. But the problem is, you just wouldn't get him at a reasonable price.
No, I do think he'd be very expensive, especially as he's a Premier League player who has scored goals. I do think he's a good player. He's still very young as well, but he just lacks the pace that I think Everton benefit from with Calvert-Lewin in the side already. So yeah, ideally I think we'd bring in someone quicker than him. But yeah, he's a decent player. But I do think he'd be expensive as well.
He, for me, looks like the kind of player that like Aston Villa would go for now that they've been promoted.
Yeah.
Like, we've got a little bit of money. We need a centre forward who's scored some goals in the Premier League. Let's go and get one who's just leaving the Premier League because he's been relegated. That would make more, especially if Tammy Abraham goes to back to Chelsea. That would make more sense. His goal record's good, but like you've just said, it's not just all about what one striker can do. It's about what they bring to the team. And I just don't think he's got the pace to get round the pitch like Dominic Calvert-Lewin. And Dominic Calvert-Lewin is just over 2 years younger than him. And I used to say in 2 years' time, Dominic Calvert-Lewin's goal tally isn't like Mitrovic's, and you've stopped Dominic Calvert-Lewin from progressing by putting a player in front of him who's not going to be our number one striker. So for me, Mitrovic is a non-starter. He doesn't excite me.
Yeah, well, I think it's perhaps more likely than some of the others, but at the same time, it doesn't excite me as much as some of the others. And also, I think you have to consider his mentality. Like sometimes he does come across as a bit short-tempered, especially at Newcastle. He wasn't very good and just seems to get sent off a lot. So yeah, and also he's still fairly unproven in the Premier League because he wasn't that good at Newcastle, and then was good in the Championship with Fulham, and then he's had one good season with Fulham, but they still got relegated. So yeah, I don't think it's unlikely, but I wouldn't really want it to happen.
No, I wouldn't want it to happen. Definitely. Yeah. A player we've been. See, this player's better than Mitrovic, but I don't think he's been linked really. He has in the past, but yeah. Callum Wilson, 27-year-old, obviously at Bournemouth, 14 goals and 10 assists. I think that's fantastic. I really do. For a player to be, involved in 24 goals. I know Bournemouth do score a lot of goals and concede a lot of goals, but I think to score 14 and have 10 assists, I think that, and it's the 10 assists that surprised me. But that's the benefit probably of playing in a 2 a lot of the time as a centre forward.
Yeah.
It's just the money they'd want for him would be daft, and I think he's got injury problems, both knees. I think he's suffered with in the past. So on paper, I'd be excited by that. I think, they had right age for us in the Premier League. Could go up another level. He might be the level. We might be the right level for him rather than, I know he's been linked with Chelsea, I think. I don't think Chelsea is I think that almost is the next level for him. So I think Everton would be a good place for him to go. I just wouldn't worry about, I think the injuries will be a problem.
Yeah, I do think it would be someone that would make sense, and I think it's it could happen quite easily. If you look at a lot of Everton's signings in the past, they've been sort of the best players from the clubs below them.
Yeah, which is basically been the problem, I think.
Yeah, but I think if you look at Calvert-Lewin and how his physical attributes benefit the team, like his strength and his pace and his aerial ability, I think Callum Wilson has those things, especially this season. He seems to have bulked up a bit, but then he has the finishing ability and he's better on the ball than Calvert-Lewin. But as you say, perhaps the injuries would be a problem, and in that case you'd maybe look at another striker as well. But yeah, I think for the right price, I'd be quite happy with it.
Yeah, I would for the right price. I think we can get bogged down in things like, I remember when we signed Joleon Lescott, and you might be a bit young, but when we signed Joleon Lescott, there was a lot of issues about his knees. Really, people were like, "Oh, you're taking a gamble. His knees are." I don't think we had one problem with his knees. I don't think we had one problem while he was at Everton with his knees. I don't think he had any problems while he was at Man City with his knees. And we've signed players before or haven't signed players before where because of injury problems, and the injuries have never reoccurred again. It's just they've come up on a medical, being warned. Listen, I remember back in Howard Kendall's days, it was Peter Reid failed his medical, and Howard Kendall just went, sign him now. It was just like, it doesn't matter. I know he'll play games. I know he'll play games for us. I think we get caught up with that. I mean, if it's bad injury, I understand. I think the other thing we get caught up is selling value. This thing that you can't buy a player because when you sell him, he'll be worth nothing. And it's like, well, what? Seriously, why does that matter? If he's at the club and you get something out of him, then why does it matter that when it comes time for him to leave, he'll be worth nothing? Look at Leighton Baines and Phil Jagielka. If they both leave the club this summer, we'll get nothing for both of them. Is anyone going to go, well, we should have known when we bought them that we wouldn't get a sell? What? It doesn't. We've got, if you get 4 or 5 years brilliant service out of a player, what does it matter what you get for them? If they've done the job that you've paid for in the beginning, it really shouldn't care.
I think, especially with people like Baines and Jagielka, after a few years, no one cares about sell-on value. Like, as long as they've been a good servant to the club, and also if you do really well, the club might end up benefiting from you doing well. Like if Callum Wilson, say if he scores 50 goals in a season and wins the league with Everton, then obviously you'll get more money from that anyway. So, but yeah, I think it'd be a good signing. As I say, his pace, scores goals. Maybe he might struggle not being in the two up front, because obviously at Everton he would almost definitely be just him up front, apart from when we're losing 2-0 and Cenk Tosun comes on.
No, I know what you mean. Well, when we signed, when Moyes first came, and we had, what was it? It was second full or third full season, when we bought Tim Cahill. So we just sold Wayne Rooney, and Tim Cahill come in, and he soon realised that it would be better to play one up front with Tim Cahill, obviously, coming from deep. And we had Marcus Bent, who, as a striker, wasn't great, but he suited the way we played. He would run all day for us, And then we went and got, so we was like, right, we need like another version of that. So we went and bought Andy Johnson, and he bought BT first. And BT couldn't play like that. He couldn't play up front on his own. He was a big lump of a striker. In a two, brilliant. But on his own, he couldn't do that running job. Then he brought Andy Johnson in, who could do that job. And that forced... And then he realised... But then he wanted both of them, and he was like, well, I can't have both of them, because I've got Cahill. Cahill was like another striker. And sometimes you can buy less of players, but if they can do the job that another player can't do. I mean, Andy Johnson would run all day just to win you a throw up the pitch, because he knew from the throw we'd score, or from the corner we'd score. And that's what it is sometimes. Sometimes it's just whoever fits the role. If we brought him in, would he get as many chances? Would he almost be... He'd have to sacrifice that striker instinct. That's the thing, I think. No matter who we bring in as a striker, I still think as a team we need to make them more chances. Because I don't think we make our strikers enough chances.
No. You'd think we would with the likes of Bernard and Sigurdsson especially, but it just doesn't seem to happen. I think maybe, Digne does put a lot of balls into the box, and perhaps Wilson would capitalise on that more. I think maybe it's something to do with the football. Obviously, it's very different to the Sam Allardyce way of playing, so
don't get me wrong.
Still improving on that.
It's a bit of both, because a more mobile striker with more striker like spidey senses gets in the right area, and Dom has to learn that. Yeah. Tosin has got those, but he can't get in the right areas because he's not mobile enough, or he doesn't get as high up the pitch enough to help create the chances in the first place. I think that's where we are. We need to find someone who's got a bit of both. So we'll wait and see. There's one more on the list, and he's last for a reason.
Oh.
Danny Welbeck, who he's an all right striker. He's an all right striker. He scored goals when he was at Man United. I thought when he was at Man United he looked very, very promising, but then went to Arsenal and it didn't quite work. Always got injuries. Come off the back of one now. Real bad ankle dislocation, I think it was. He's 28. He's on a free transfer. He scored... Forget about what he scored last season, but the season before, he had 28 games and scored 5 goals. That's not great, that. So as a 28-year-old, on paper, you'd go, do you know what? That wouldn't be a bad sign, that on a free. 28, could show Dominic Calvert-Lewin a few things. I just think the problem with someone like Danny Welbeck is, at 28, he'd be asking for ridiculous money and to start a lot more games. And I think that would be the problem. If he came into Everton and said, right, I'm 28, I've got bad injury problems, I'll earn something realistic, then maybe Everton would go, you know what, this works. This fits with our plan. We can go and get Kevin Augustin, train him up over the next couple of years, have Welbeck as a first or second choice striker, maybe switching with Dom, and then bring someone like Kevin Augustin through, or whoever. Ellis Sims, for all we know, could go in the under-23s and be amazing. But I just think that what he would want wages-wise would be unrealistic for what we're willing to pay.
Yeah, well, I read that he was on $100,000 a week at the moment, and Everton would pay him more than that. I don't know if that was true, but yeah, I've always quite liked Danny Welbeck, and I think he would be good as a second choice striker, or even he could even play on the wing a bit, probably. He always works hard, and I think he'd be a good player to bring on. I mean, I'd rather bring him on than Walcott and Tosin, Sandro Nias. So
they all still play for Everton.
Yeah.
No, he's a very honest player, and I think that's why he gets a lot of injuries, because he's a very honest player. But injuries take a toll. When you get to 28, you've had that many injuries. They do take a toll. You'll be feeling them when he gets cold.
Yeah.
And it's that wage, and that's what puts me off. I think in years gone by, he'd already be signed for Everton. He would.
Yeah.
He'd be like a perfect like Moyes signing him, or anyone. We'd already have him signed up, because he ticks all the boxes. He literally does. He's from Manchester, or he lived in Manchester. He's from Manchester as well, I think. He's 28. He's free. The wages wouldn't be, if you're getting something for free, I think the wages would be all right. He'd tick every box at like old Everton, but hopefully with new Everton, we're not doing things like that. But doesn't excite me, but worth talking about.
Yeah, it doesn't really excite me in the sense that Everton are pushing for top 6 and should be looking at top 6 quality players.
That's exactly right. That's what we should be looking at. That's the mentality Everton have got to start getting into, and that's why, although people can scoff at someone like Neres and João Felix and Memphis Depay, they're the players we should be going for, because you're only going to get in the top 6 if you're buying players that the top 6 want. That's how Man City did it. Man City went to Arsenal and went, come and play for us. That's how you've got to do it. And if you don't, you've got to find that other path. And maybe we're looking more at the other path at the moment, because FFP does stop you doing what Man City's done. But yeah, we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see what happens. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Anyone we've missed out on, anyone we've been linked with loads of players, but anyone we've been linked with that we haven't mentioned today, let us know. Big thanks to Billy making a fantastic debut. We thought we'd introduce him slowly, get him onto the Patreon, because Patreon's where all the love is. We know that. YouTube can be harsh. It's a harsh place for me. Sometimes I look at the comments and I'm like, oh my God, leave me alone. I wore shorts because it was warm. It gets warm in here. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. There'll be more Billy action. Have his own show soon. Yeah. So me and Baz can have a rest. He can come on and do a show. Thanks for watching. We'll see you later.